Well, welcome to another Coffee with Bruce. And I'm here today with Eleni Steinman, who is the head of strategy and operations for Bloxroute, which is a company I recently started helping out as an advisor. So today I'm going to let Eleni ask me a bunch of questions. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I'm really excited to be here and do this. So let's just jump in. My first question is, I know that you're really famous for inventing MPLS and SDNs, but are more recently famous for writing books. So how did you make that transition and what are you writing about?
Yeah, I think maybe you're overstating the famousness bit, but I am known for all those things. So I've actually been doing books for about 25 years, but it was kind of a hobby that I squeezed into weekends and evenings. And then more recently, I thought, I think I can do this as kind of my full-time or at least, solidly part-time occupation. And so it's something I'm really passionate about because I love helping people understand technology. And I've also become very passionate about open source. And one of the things I realized about 10 years ago was that there was this great marriage possible between open source, which is normally used for delivering software, can actually be used for delivering published content like books. And so I've now started this business with my co-author, Larry Peterson, and we're producing a series of books on a range of networking and related topics. And we're doing it all using open source. All of our stuff's up on GitHub. And so it's just really us trying to do what we do best, which is explain technology to people and get it out to the broadest possible audience, and also leverage all the input that we can get from the rest of the community to actually make our books better than if we just wrote them ourselves. So I've been doing it for a few months now, and so far having a great time.
What's the last topic I guess you've written about?
Yeah, so we actually just finished a book on SDN. So, stick with what you know, I guess. But yeah, so we published a book, and this is our first experience in completely self-publishing. So we've taken everything, including all the getting it printed and getting it typeset, all that stuff. We took that all on board. Now we're trying to figure out how to market it. But we've had a good time producing that book, and we're even looking into things like how to get it translated into other languages right now. So I guess so far so good on the self-publishing front.
So I mean, this is a natural transition to blockchains, which is inherently sort of open source and distributed in terms of building a community to make a product. Is that what originally got you interested in the space, or was it something else?
Yeah, so I think it was probably about 5 years ago that somebody at VMware, who was a real leader in the field of distributed systems, sort of started educating me about blockchain. And so I sort of started getting a little bit of information about it. I hadn't really paid attention to it at that point. And, I realized what an interesting and innovative space it was. And so I started digging into it a bit. VMware, where I worked for the last 8 years, was ultimately decided to go and make a product around blockchain, particularly focused on enterprise use cases. But there's a much bigger world out there with all the applications of blockchain, and we all know things like cryptocurrencies, and I guess the topic of this week is non-fungible tokens, and so it's a very, very rich and innovative ecosystem. It kind of has an interesting point of intersection with networking, and honestly, that's kind of what got me interested in Bloxroute, is the fact that the company is bringing together some existing networking technologies and applying it to improving the performances of the performance of blockchains.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good reasons. I think the other reason we hear a lot is a philosophical one about the need for the internet to inherently be open source.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And like, there's this whole idea that the internet started off as this wonderfully decentralized thing, and then over the last sort of dozen years or so, it's become increasingly centralized, where there's kind of one dominant player in search and one dominant or two maybe in social, and so like if you're getting access to content, it's sort of mediated through a very small number of players. So the internet has become this very, very centralized thing, contrary to its original design objectives. And there's definitely this hope that with blockchains, we might get back to a much more disintermediated kind of world where things could be much more decentralized. Now, is that going to happen? I guess, we'll wait and see, but there's certainly a lot of optimism about that. And I think it's one of the reasons why you see so much venture capital money going into blockchain. It's not just that cryptocurrencies are going to change the world. It's more that this idea of a new decentralized internet could be a very, very powerful platform for the next generation of innovation.
Yeah, I think it's sort of odd that there's capital in something open source because you're now monetizing a thing that everyone owns. And since now you've written open source books, have you had to experiment with new monetization strategies for?
Yeah. So let's just say we're experimenting, and we're not doing a lot of monetization at the moment. And so I think we're still trying to figure out like what are the options there. But I mean, fortunately, we're not really doing this for the money. We're really doing it because we are mostly interested in just how do we get our expertise and knowledge out to the broadest possible audience.
Yeah. And this isn't your first startup, right? After VMware, you worked at a startup?
Actually, I was in a startup before VMware, and that was how I ended up at VMware. Yeah, that was a legit startup. That one was there to make money. So yeah, this one we've got, I think, a bit more of a kind of a social good view of what we're trying to do. But we don't hate making money either. But
Yeah. Could you maybe speak a little bit about working at a large company like VMware versus working at a startup, and now I guess advising?
Yeah, I mean, the time that I spent at Nicira, which was the SDN startup, was one of the most exciting times of my life, I think. And my only regret is that because of the timing, I joined them, and I was only there for about 6-7 months before we got acquired. So I had this very intense and very wonderful experience. But then I became part of VMware and became part of a big company again. There's clearly advantages and disadvantages to both. In a startup, you know almost everybody, you can move much more quickly, but ultimately there are things that you are going to need to be able to scale, like a big sales force. And so, like for me, the challenges with a big company are, can you keep on moving quickly enough, particularly if you're trying to incubate a new technology inside a big company with existing products. So like one of the things I think we did well at VMware was maintain something of a startup culture within the group that was trying to incubate software-defined networking within a much bigger established company, and do things in a way that didn't cause us to suddenly slow down and move at the speed of a big company. And we did.
That's really great to hear. Is there, I guess, something that you think the networking community needs right now, like the next set of innovations or big problem that they should be looking to solve?
I mean, I do think the thing that's really bothering me about networking at the moment is, in some contexts, we've really done a great job of making networking kind of modern. So you can, program networks, you can write APIs and use higher level automation software to drive how you provision networks. But there's a whole lot of physical networking gear out there, and a whole lot of people who like operating physical networks and will continue to do so, who are still kind of stuck in, I would say, the 20th century. And not to be negative about people who built their careers running sort of traditional networks, but we're a long way away from having networking become sort of properly automated. And this whole idea of infrastructure as code, it's caught on in certain places within the networking world, but it's got a long way to go. And I think that's what I would like to see the networking community addressing is, could we make every part of networking as highly automated as the pieces that you see, for example, in the public clouds, where automation is just absolutely essential and very well adopted. But if you compare sort of existing enterprise networks, automation's still pretty much in its infancy.
Do you think, I guess, the slower to adopt will leapfrog to new innovations, or they have to go through this like life cycle of sort of incrementally improving their networks?
I mean, I think one of the sort of the truths of networking is you have to have an incremental adoption strategy. If I was building a company from scratch today, I would try to minimize the amount of physical networking gear I have and do everything possible in clouds and things that could be properly automated. But there's lots of companies out there that still need to have physical networking, and I think we have to have a strategy for how we sort of incrementally move that to a more automated world.
I got it. Maybe they'll read your books and then think of it.
Yeah, well, that's certainly part of our vision that we're trying to get across in things like the SDN book.
And I mean, I guess selfishly, to go back to blockchains, is there a space or a place you see blockchain networks fit into this larger networking, I guess, community of us all being connected?
I mean, I guess I would say I view blockchain as it's a platform in the same way that the internet is a platform, and it enables a whole lot of things. So just as the internet enabled a whole lot of innovations and like an amazing range of applications that weren't really envisaged when it was first built, I think that's kind of where we are with blockchains as well. And so it's way too early to say like what innovation it's going to enable, but we're seeing the early ones now. And I guess I probably feel I have to say too that I really hope that as we see a lot of people working on blockchain technology, that we find some ways to make it much less of a carbon generating problem. That
Right.
There are technologies out there. VMware has some. There's others that are trying to make blockchains much less carbon intensive, and I feel like that's going to become an increasingly urgent problem that has to get addressed. I don't necessarily think it's a networking problem, but there's a real technology problem there that has to get addressed somehow.
Yeah. And my understanding is, at least with the history of the internet, was like bandwidth wasn't a problem until a bunch of people started using it, and then became such a problem they're going to fix it. And so perhaps with blockchains, do you see a similar pattern of like maybe networking right now isn't a huge problem in blockchains, but it's going to, as they get used, as carbon becomes a problem, they're going to end up fixing it? Like, are there those parallels we can draw?
Yeah, that's a good observation, actually. Like, congestion control is another topic that we're addressing in an upcoming book. And congestion is kind of the thing you're touching on, that it wasn't an issue in the early internet until a bunch of people started using it, and then it became a big problem. And there's now been sort of 30 years of research to make congestion something that we know how to handle in networks. And I think you're absolutely right. There's similar things happening in blockchain. You can certainly point to the networking issues that Blocksprout's working on, and the carbon issues that I just touched on. Probably a bunch of other issues out there as well. And so I think we're in the early days. We don't even know what the problems are yet. But as they arise, one hopes that the people who work in the field will find the solutions.
Now that you're in an advising role, is there something that you're most excited to do as an advisor versus being a builder?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's fun about being an advisor is you do get to draw on your own experiences from earlier in your career. And having worked in both big and small companies, I guess I have some views on things that are really important for startup companies. And some of those are about like, how do you create a new category, which was kind of the thing that was super exciting when I was at Nicira. Other like really important things like how do you build a company culture? I was at Nicira, which had an amazing culture. VMware had a fantastic culture. Cisco was really interesting because like I saw it go from a 5,000 person company to a 60,000 person company, and it's very hard, not to have a change in culture as you go through that amount of growth. But that is one of the things you should work on as a leader of a company, is try to create a culture that is sort of self-sustaining, and it's not a trivial thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we're really excited to have you, because that's the type of advice we need, and to learn from others' experience.
Well, great. I'm excited to be on board, and look forward to doing a lot more with Blocksprout.
Yeah, us too. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Perfect.